revealed how baby puppy Ginger's inspiring quest to help his parents led to an incredible, life-transforming journey. In a quaint suburban town cradled by the arms of golden fields, a little golden retriever named Ginger was about to embark on a heartwarming adventure. The morning sun poured in like molten gold, spilling across the miller's beloved farm. But within their cozy home, a storm of worry brewed. John and Sarah Miller, devoted farmers, had poured their souls into their agriculture dream, and yet the creeping shadows of mounting debts loomed ever larger over them. Gone were the laughter and joy that once filled their evenings. Instead, disheartened silence filled the air as anxiety weighed heavy on their hearts. Ginger, only a puppy but bursting with love and energy, could sense the heavy burden his parents carried. Every anxious sigh from Sarah and John was like a dagger to his little heart. He just wanted to see those smiles again. The thought was like fire in his chest, and he couldn't sit still any longer. Today's the day, he thought, with a determined twitch of his tiny tail. Gathering his furry friends Max, the chatty beagle with a knack for storytelling, Clever Whiskers the tabby cat whose curiosity knew no bounds, and Shy Clover, the bunny who had the softest heart, they hatched a grand plan. What if they could spread kindness throughout the town, reminding everyone of the joy in their community? The thought made their tails wag with enthusiasm. They set off on their mission, delivering homemade treats to neighbors and prancing around the park, their antics drawing laughter and joy like bees to blooming flowers. Yet, as bright as their efforts seemed, a fierce storm rolled in, darkening the skies with ominous clouds. Rain lashed down in torrents, and wind howled like a creature of the night, threatening to sweep away everything the Millers had worked for. Ginger's heart sank as he watched John and Sarah's faces fall, despair creeping into their eyes. His tiny spirit screamed in response, "I won't let this happen." Gathering his friends, they crafted a daring plan. With fierce determination, they raced from door to door, urging neighbors to rally together, forging a community stronger than the storm itself. As they darted through puddles and dodged flying debris, their collective hope ignited a spark in each person they met, turning fear into action. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the Millers faced the possibility of losing it all, a glimmer of hope rose against the raging storm outside. Community members began showing up, each bringing tools and love, united, showing just how powerful togetherness could be. Ginger's heart swelled with pride as he hopped among the workers, tail wagging furiously, urging them on. Would this little puppy and his companions help save a family, a farm, and a whole community from the storm's fury? As they rolled up their sleeves, the air buzzed with determination. Little did they know, their journey was only just beginning, a journey that would test not just their resolve, but the very heart of their community and the dreams it held dear. What lay ahead as the storm raged on would challenge the Millers to find strength in each other and maybe even discover something deeper than they ever knew existed. The storm continued to unleash its fury, but within the miller's farm, the atmosphere transformed. What began as a scene of despair was slowly evolving into one of collective resilience. Neighbors huddled together, hands clasping hammers, shovels, and broomstools of solidarity instead of fear. The soft rumble of their voices grew louder as they strategized, asking Ginger to bark if they were on the right track or if he had noticed any danger. It felt as if the little puppy was a beacon, guiding them through the chaos. John and Sarah looked on, gratitude welling up in their chests. But even as they felt a flicker of hope, a wave of worry struck. What if it's not enough? Sarah whispered, wiping her brow as she tried to keep her tears at bay. John looked into her eyes, trying to comfort her even as the winds raged on outside. We have to believe in them, in us. Meanwhile, Ginger scampered excitedly from one person to the next, making sure to leave trails of warmth and encouragement. With every wag of his tail, he spread an infectious determination. Together, we can do this, he seemed to say, rallying not just his furry companions, but the entire community. Each friendly bark was like a small spark igniting renewed joy and laughter amid the bluster. Max dashed from a gaggle of children, conveying the stories of their own pets who faced storms and thrived. This is just like what happened to Brownie, he exclaimed, excitement bubbling in his voice. If he can rebuild, so can we. Whiskers, always seeking adventure, proposed they build barricades of hay bales to protect their crops from flooding. With Ginger leading the way, the air buzzed with energy as tasks were delegated and laughter echoed against the dark clouds. Clover, while shy, found courage by the strength of the pack, following Ginger closely. In the whirlwind of collaboration, she delivered fresh-baked bread and cookies, small acts of kindness that rejuvenated spirits. Even the quietest townsfolk began sharing stories, their voices rising like an anthem against the storm. Tears of joy mixed with rain as perspectives shifted. Neighbors became family. As twilight fell, the storm showed signs of abating. The wind whispered softer, and the rain slowed to a gentle patter. The millers could hardly believe their eyes as they looked around the farm. Their crops endured, their neighbors stood together, and laughter filled the hollow spaces left by their concerns. Just then, a familiar face appeared in the distance. It was Mr. Jenkins, a grizzled elderly farmer, well-loved in the community. He leaned on his pitchfork, eyes glistening with pride as he took in the scene. You've all shown what true community looks like, he called out, and that spirit, it's what will carry us through. With new resolve, John and Sarah exchanged knowing glances. They realized the storm, while fearsome, had unveiled a strength within their community that they never knew existed. Hope surged in Ginger's heart. There was something special about this bond they were forging, something that felt like a lifeline. But just as they began to celebrate, a rumble echoed through the stillness, followed by a loud crack. Everyone turned, hearts racing as they beheld an ominous sight. A tree, ravaged by the storm, had snapped and was now barreling toward the barn where the livestock huddled in fear. Would they be able to save their beloved animals in time? Would this community spirit prevail against one last threat of nature? Ginger and his friends bolted toward the barn, driven by instinct and courage. In the face of this impending disaster, they had to act fast. Could they overcome this final challenge together? The roar of the wind drowned out all other sounds as Ginger dashed forward. Heart pounding, He ran beside John and Sarah, who sprinted toward the barn. Just moments ago, the scene had felt triumphant. Now, a new wave of fear washed over them. The tree swayed ominously overhead, its weighty trunk creaking under the strain. Faster! John yelled, and adrenaline shot through them all. The livestock inside the barn bleated in panic, their frightened eyes wide as they sensed the threat looming outside. Ginger, pure instinct guiding him, barked frantically an urgent call to arms. His small frame darted between the gathering crowd, nudging neighbors to move quicker. We can't let them get hurt, he urged, even though no one could understand his barks. Max emerged from behind the barn, eyes wide as alarm flickered across his face. The animals. We need to get them out. Right. Sarah shot a look at John. We'll turn them out into the pasture. It's safer there. Together, they rounded up the livestock. With a mixture of encouragement and gentle prodding, they led the cows and sheep down the path away from the barn. The ground was muddy. They slipped and slipped again, but it didn't matter. Each successful step felt like a small victory against the raging storm. On the other side, Mr. Jenkins and the older farmers rallied to keep the animals calm, whispering soft words of reassurance. Amid the chaos, they steered them towards safety, their collective experience and wisdom shining through the fear. Ginger, ever watchful, raced back to the barn, the sound of snapping branches echoing in his ears. He had to protect his family. Amid the noise, he spotted Clover struggling to push a frightened lamb toward the exit. She hesitated, unsure of her strength. With an encouraging bark, Ginger bounded over. The little pup gently nudged the lamb forward, coiling energy into his tiny frame. Clover looked at him, her face a mix of awe and determination. Together. She whispered, her voice shaky but stronger now. With Ginger by her side, they coaxed the lamb out finally, the fear in Clover's heart replaced by something else, bravery. Meanwhile, John assessed their surroundings. The tree was moments away from falling. Everyone, we need to reinforce the barn, he shouted, spotting an old tractor nearby. We can use the hay bales now, neighbors nodded, urgency fueling them. They grabbed whatever was nearby old planks, extra fencing, and piled them against the barn door as best they could. Each piece they added felt like a shield against the storm. Ginger dashed back and forth, keeping spirits high with each friendly bark. He seemed like the heart of their effort, a motivating spirit rallying his friends. But just as they managed to fortify the barn, the wind howled louder than before. A deafening crack echoed again, and the tree began to topple, its roots tearing from the soaked earth. "Look out!" Someone shouted as the massive trunk crashed toward them, branches splintering. In a flash, Ginger spun around, preparing to sprint forward again, but instead of fleeing, he found his ground. He bolted toward John and Sarah, barking frantically, begging them to move. With his heart racing, John grabbed Sarah's hand, pulling her close as they all felt the vibrations of the tree's descent. Just before it hit, a thundering crash echoed, shaking the very ground they stood on. Had their efforts been enough to save the barn and the animals they held dear? Or had nature's fury swelled beyond their control? As dust settled and debris rained down, the community stood frozen, hearts in their throats, awaiting the aftermath. Would their bravery withstand one final test? The lingering question echoed in the air, tightening every chest, as they all stared at the barn once more. The dust began to clear, revealing the chaos that had erupted around the barn. Ginger's heart raced, not knowing if everyone had escaped the falling tree. He turned, scanning the faces of John, Sarah, and the rest of the neighbors. Despite the shock and disbelief, they remained on their feet, eyes wide but unbroken. "Is everyone okay?" Sarah gasped, brushing dirt from her clothes. She and John were standing in the middle of what was now a small clearing, encircled by the rubble of the fallen tree and shards of wood from the barn. Max appeared, breathless yet alive, his clothes splattered with mud. "I think so," he exclaimed. "But we need to check on the animals." Fueled by a mix of adrenaline and worry, John and Sarah dashed towards the barn, gingerly stepping over branches and debris. Ginger darted after them, his instincts driving him to protect and guide. He could sense the urgency radiating from his family. Entering the ruined barn felt like walking into a different world. The once vibrant space was now a graveyard of broken hay bales and splintered wood. Cloudy patches of light filtered through areas of gnarled wood above, casting eerie shadows. The livestock stood trembling in the far corner, eyes wide and fearful. Clover, still carrying that newfound courage, stood tall beside her brother, the lamb they rescued nestled safely in her arms. "They're scared," she said quietly, instinctively soothing the trembling sheep. "We have to be strong for them." Ginger barked softly, nearing the frightened animals. Drawing closer, he sensed their fear and joined Clover, nudging each cow and sheep gently, urging them to trust. "It's okay. It's okay." Sarah reassured them, her voice smooth as honey. "You're safe now." With each positive word, the tension began to ease. One by one, the livestock began to relax, responding to their familiar faces and voices. John found a few, more animals trapped under scattered hay bales, and Max lent a hand to help clear the way. As they worked together, the unity of the community shone bright. Neighbors began to filter in, their faces etched with concern, but also determination. They formed a chain, passing out the animals to safety. Their efforts a dance of solidarity against the torment of the storm. Then, out of the chaos, an unexpected voice emerged. Mr. Jenkins, the oldest farmer, approached, his hands calloused yet gentle. "We can rebuild, folks." "We've done it before," he said, nodding toward the barn's wreckage. "But we need to be ready for whatever comes next." Ginger could hear the certainty in his tone, and it wrapped around him like a warm blanket. They were a family bound together by the trials faced and overcome. Yet, amidst the effort, a nagging worry gnawed at Ginger. They had saved the animals, but what of the barn and the remainder of their home? Without it, what would they do? Suddenly, the wind shifted, unnervingly calm now. The dark clouds began to part, offering brief glimpses of sunlight. It was as if the world was testing their resilience, pulling the community closer, yet looming shadows still hovered overhead. As John and Sarah surveyed the wreckage, hope flickered in their eyes. Would they be able to rebuild? Ginger could feel the weight of their unspoken fears and aspirations hanging in the air. Angry murmurs began to rise amongst the neighbors. "What will happen to the farm? How will we manage?" Ginger padded up to John, trying to lend him strength. He barked softly, lifting his tail with that unyielding spirit of hope. Perhaps together they could rise from the ashes. But just as they formulated their planning, an unexpected noise broke the silence. A distant rumble echoed, sending shivers down Ginger's spine. "What now?" Sarah whispered, fear creeping back into her voice. The crowd fell silent, staring at the darkening sky once again. What more could test their strength in this already tumultuous moment? The answer loomed in the air, and as it beckoned, their hearts began to race once more. The rumble grew louder, swallowing their breath and increasing the tension in the air. Ginger's instincts kicked into high gear, and he felt a knot forming in his stomach. What was coming next? He looked up, his sharp ears perked, trying to pinpoint the source of the disturbance. The once calm landscape now felt charged, as if the ground itself trembled in anticipation. "What is that?" Max shouted over the ominous growl of the sky. "No idea, but we need to get everyone inside." John yelled back, already moving to gather the remaining neighbors and livestock huddled near the barn. Ginger glanced at Sarah, who was gripping Clover's arm and pointing toward the trees. Lightning, or it might be the storm rolling back in, she said, her voice strained. "We can't let anyone stay out here." As John began directing the frightened neighbors to gather what they could and lead the animals to safety, Sarah and Clover quickly joined him. Ginger raced to their side, barking insistently. The urgency of the moment demanded more than just action. It called for courage and strategy. Heavy droplets of rain began to fall, splattering against the ground and mixing with the dust from earlier. Ginger could feel the tension. The fear rose like a wall around them, closing in tightly. It was a moment that demanded their attention, a threshold they all needed to cross together. "Ginger!" John called, waving him over. "Can you help round up the stray sheep at the back?" With a firm nod, Ginger dashed to the far corner of the barn. The livestock had begun to panic once more as they sensed the shift in the weather. In the chaotic whirl of rain and worry, Ginger's presence proved to be a beacon of hope. He nudged the shaken sheep, guiding them toward the others, steadying his own heartbeat with each reassuring woof. "Good boy, Ginger." Clover cheered. The sound of her voice lifted his spirits. One by one, the sheep followed, a flood of woolly bodies moving towards safety. As he ushered them through the debris, the rumble grew closer, a rolling thunder that echoed in his ears. He pushed aside his fears, focusing instead on the task at hand. The strength of the bond between him and this community surged through him. "You've got this," Sarah praised as she rushed past, her hands entwined with John's. They worked seamlessly, a true team forged by hardship. Just as they finished rounding up the last of the livestock, the wind howled, and a sudden flash of lightning split the sky. Ginger's heart raced again. He barked frantically, urging everyone to get inside. The neighbors, now fueled by the urgency of the storm, moved quickly, huddling in the barn's remnants. "Everyone in!" John called one last time as the heavy rain fell, drumming down like 1,000 tiny feet on the roof. Ginger took a moment to check on Clover, making sure she was safe before joining the adults. Inside, the air hung thick with anxiety and dread, but also determination. They were here, together, staring into the chaos yet again. The older neighbors huddled close, reminiscing stories of rebuilding and facing storms of their past. It reminded Ginger of the warmth and security of family, both two-legged and four. As the storm broke overhead, enveloping the barn in a cacophony of sound, Ginger felt a surge of hope. They would rise above this, just as they had done before. Yet, in the back of his mind, a flicker of worry lay, would this be the last storm they could weather? "Once this passes, we'll figure it out. Mr. Jenkins's voice cut through, firm yet comforting. But from the far corner, another noise emerged, a scared bleat that wasn't part of the livestock they had found. Ginger's ears pricked up. What more was out there? What had he missed? With a determined glance towards John and Sarah, he debated for a moment. Should he investigate, or stay put with those he loved? The storms of the present raged outside, but new challenges waited in the unknown silence beyond. The question lingered in the air. Would he dare to face what lay ahead for the sake of his family? Ginger's heart pounded in his chest, a steady drumbeat of resolve amidst the storm's ferocity. The bleat echoed again, more desperate this time, urging him forward like a siren's call. He glanced back at the warmth of the barn, the flickering shadows of community etched against the backdrop of chaos. But the bleat pulled at him, a thread of instinct woven deep into his being. Gathering his courage, Ginger darted towards the barn door. The wind whipped his fur as he squeezed through the crack, the storm's intensity hitting him like a wall of water. Rain lashed against his face, and the low roar of thunder vibrated through the very ground. He stood still for a moment, the familiar scent of earth and grass mixing with the fresh scent of rain filling his nose. The frantic bleating continued, drawing him away from the safety of the barn and toward the dense trees that lined the property. Ginger hesitated, torn between the warmth of familiarity and the daunting unknown. He could hear the panic in that bleat and knew he couldn't ignore it. With a deep breath, he sprinted toward the sound, his paws splashing through puddles. Each step was a leap of faith. The trees loomed ahead, heavy with rain, but the instinct to protect drove him on. As he reached the tree line, the sound of the bleat began to fade. Had he lost it? No, there it was again. It was closer, now, pulling him deeper into the woods. The branches snapped overhead like shouts of protest, but Ginger pressed on, driven by loyalty and love. Fueled by the walls of the barn left behind. He pushed through the underbrush, his heartbeat a battle drum. Emerging into a small clearing, he spotted what he'd been searching for. A tiny lamb, lost and shivering, its fleece matted and wet. Panic washed over Ginger, and he rushed to the lamb's side. "Hey, it's okay," his gentle tone broke through the storm. The lamb looked up with wide, frightened eyes, but the warmth of Ginger's presence began to soothe it. With a soft nudge, he encouraged the lamb to rise. It wobbled on its legs, bleating weakly. Ginger felt a swell of determination course through him. They couldn't stay out here in the storm. He gently nudged the little one, leading it back toward the safety of the barn, where the others awaited. The path was treacherous, rain pouring down in sheets, making it hard to see. But Ginger stayed close, guiding the lamb with unwavering confidence. Almost there, he whispered, his heart racing as he heard the low rumble of thunder. Each step felt monumental, but he was not just a dog. He was a guardian, a protector. And he would bring this lamb back to the ones who loved him most. Finally, they reached the barn, the dim light spilling through the door. Ginger nudged the lamb inside and let out a triumphant bark. The warmth of bodies huddled together in relief filled the air, echoing the bond of community that brought them all through even the fiercest storm. John and Sarah rushed to him, eyes wide with awe. "You found it!" Sarah exclaimed, kneeling beside Ginger and the little lamb, wrapping her arm around both. The lamb nestled against her, finally calm. But just as they basked in their victory, another crash of thunder rolled in, louder and closer than before. Ginger's ears perked up again, sensing that this storm was not simply a test of them all, but the herald of something far more dangerous. Is there more out there? John whispered, fear creeping back into his voice. Ginger could only nod, his heart sinking. He had faced the storm outside, but what if there was something even darker, lurking ahead? What awaited them beyond the storm? John's breath hitched as he glanced nervously at the darkened sky. The lightning flashed, illuminating the barn in a stark white light, casting long shadows that seemed to dance ominously. The atmosphere crackled, heavy with anticipation and fear. Ginger sensed the tension tightening around them, the relentless storm now amplifying the unease. Do you think? Sarah's voice trailed off, her gaze darting back to the door, as if the storm might spill more than just rain. Ginger pressed closer to her, the warmth of his body a small comfort against the uncertainty. We need to stay together. John finally spoke, his voice steady but laced with concern. Whatever is out there, we face it as a family. Ginger felt a rush of gratitude for his humans. They were brave, just like he was trying to be, and he would protect them with every ounce of strength he had. The sound of the bleating lamb, now calmed by the proximity of the others, reminded him that they were not just facing the unknown for themselves, but for them all. The barn creaked and swayed, the walls barely holding against the wind's fury. Another wave of rain slammed down, as if washing away the last remnants of safety. Ginger's ears pricked up again, and something stirred within him. It wasn't just the storm, it was the haunting sound of another animal in distress. This time it was a different call, a low whimper that punctuated the storm the way a beacon calls a lost ship. Did you hear that? Ginger turned his head toward the door, his instincts hacking through any traces of fear. The urgency in that cry resonated, igniting a fire within him anew. What if it's another lamb? Sarah blurted out, her fear transforming into a determination echoed across the faces of the remaining farm animals. At that moment John nodded in agreement, his resolve hardening. We have to help. Ginger's heart swelled at their willingness to confront the storm. With a deep inhale, he glanced back at the lamb nestled against Sarah, content but vulnerable. Stay here, he barked, instinctually knowing how to protect the small creature. It felt like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. He wouldn't just bear the burden of his own safety, he had to lead them all. With a flurry of quick, staccato steps, Ginger headed for the door once again. The threshold of the barn felt like a portal to danger, but he couldn't leave another creature out there. Steeling himself against the storm's chill, he burst into the rain, his fur drenched instantly as he charged into the tempest. His senses heightened, he followed the sound, darting through the sheets of rain that obscured everything in soft waves of gray. The call grew louder, more frantic, more pained. Ginger pushed on, his focus blurring out everything other than the desperate cries. In the chaos of wind and rain, a flash of movement caught his eye. There, amongst the thicket and wild bush, was another shape, twisted and trembling. As he approached, he heard the unmistakable whimper of a pup, struggling and trapped. Ginger's heart dropped. They needed him now more than ever. I'm coming, he barked, rushing forward. The tiny dog looked up, wide-eyed and frightened. But at that moment, a powerful rumble of thunder cracked across the sky, echoing in the night. Ginger, froze. Salvation was so close, but nature's raw fury surged around him. A massive tree nearby began to sway ominously, its roots compromised by the rain-soaked ground. Ginger. John's voice pierced through the storm, urgency lacing every syllable. Time seemed to stretch as uncertainty filled the air. Would he save this pup and return to his family unscathed? Or was fate steering them toward another challenge they weren't prepared for? Ginger faced the howling storm, the unwanted weight of fear grasping at him, yet he took a bold step forward. The cries of the pup fueled his courage. As branches cracked and the ground shook beneath him, Ginger lunged forward, ready to reach the lost creature. But would he make it back to the safety of his family? The answer loomed just out of reach. Ginger surged forward, muscles coiled tightly beneath his soaked fur. The world around him dissolved into a chaotic blur as he fought against the torrent. Thunder boomed overhead, and the rain battered against his body like 1,000 tiny stones. But nothing could distract him from the trembling pup ahead. He reached the thicket, branches scratching at him as he pushed through. The pup was smaller than he'd imagined, shivering and trapped beneath a fallen branch. Its wide eyes reflected panic and pain. "Hold on," Ginger urged, his heart racing. He clenched his teeth, eyes narrowing on the task. With a desperate leap, he shoved against the branch with all his might. The heavy wood creaked ominously, but moved just enough to free the little dog. Ginger hurried back, nudging it gently with his nose. As the pup stood, Ginger could see its ribs rising and falling, rapidly. "You're safe now. Let's get out of here." But just then a violent gust of wind tore through the clearing. Ginger's ears flattened against his head as he turned toward the barn, the flickering yellow light only a distant memory. The storm roared like a beast, howling over them. A branch snapped from the looming tree, crashing down just a few feet away, making the ground tremble beneath them. "Ginger!" John's voice shattered through the storm again, sharper this time filled with worry for both him and the pup. The sound propelled Ginger into motion. He couldn't waste another second. "Follow me!" He barked, lowering his body, urging the pup to run alongside him. They bolted through the rain, dodging fallen branches and mud puddles, desperate to reach the safety of the barn. As they neared the barn door, Ginger glanced back. He'd done it they'd survived the chaos together. But the pup seemed to lose steam, slowing to a halt. Panic flickered in Ginger's chest. "Keep going. We're almost there." The little dog whined but hesitated. In that moment, Ginger felt an unexpected wave of despair wash over him. He realized the fear of the unknown was as powerful as the storm itself. With a gentle nudge, Ginger pressed against the pup's side. "You're not alone. We'll make it through this." As if in response, the pup summoned its last bit of courage and pushed forward, matching Ginger's pace. Together, they lunged into the barn just as another cacophony of thunder crashed. Inside, the warmth enveloped them, Sarah, and John rushed over, relief washing over their faces as they looked at the drenched duo. The lamb bleated. It seemed to sense the danger had passed. "You did it, Ginger," Sarah exclaimed, reaching down to rub his wet head. John knelt beside the little pup, his brow furrowing as he assessed the small creature. "We'll take care of you," he murmured, his voice soft. Ginger felt pride swell in his chest as he watched his family gather around them. They were safe now, but deep down another thought. Had they escaped the storm, or was there a deeper challenge lying in wait? Then, As the first calm moment since the chaos settled in, Ginger heard another sound, a low, rumbling growl from outside. It was faint, but unmistakable. What else was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the storm to pass? Ginger's ears perked up, his protective instincts kicking in once more. What now? He growled softly, glancing toward the door, bracing for whatever might come next. Ginger's heart raced in the stillness following the storm. He could feel the heat from the barn's interior slowly warming his soaked fur. But an icy dread gripped him at the sound outside. It wasn't just the storm that had them on edge now. It was what might come next. "Stay close," he whispered to the pup, who was still catching its breath, its small frame trembling beside him. The little dog's eyes darted around, searching for shadows that flickered in the barn's dim light. Joe stood up still, crouched next to the pup, his posture tense. "Did you hear that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah remained close, her hand resting protectively on Ginger's back. The growl persisted, deep and rumbling. Ginger pressed his nose into the pup's fur, trying to offer comfort, but a knot twisted in his stomach. He could sense the fear around him, a feeling that wasn't just coming from the little one at his side. "What he said?" Sarah asked, glancing nervously towards the door. "I don't know," John replied, "but we should." He was interrupted by a sudden crash against the barn's side. Splinters shot out as a massive shadow loomed just beyond the door. Ginger's instincts kicked in. He wouldn't let anything harm his family or the pup beside him. "Get back!" Ginger growled, stepping protectively in front of John and Sarah. As he did, the heavy barn door swung open with a creaking protest, revealing a looming philoegist. It was a wolf. Ginger felt his fur stand on end. The wolf's eyes glinted like shards of ice, piercing through the dim light as it surveyed the scene. Tension built in the air, heavy like the humidity before another storm. The pup whimpered softly, hiding closer to Ginger's legs. "Stay behind me," he urged, though he could hardly keep the tremor from his voice. The wolf took a few slow steps forward. Ginger knew he had to act fast. "Leave us," he barked, trying to sound brave, though his heart thudded in his chest. "We're not afraid of you." The wolf's growl deepened, and for a moment, Ginger thought the creature would lunge. Then, unexpectedly, it paused. Tilting its head slightly, the wolf seemed to study them, as if assessing whether to attack or retreat. In that moment, Ginger's mind raced. Could he reason with the creature? Did wolves even think like that? "Behind me, Ginger," John said, his voice firm but strained. He took a step forward, hands raised as if to show he meant no harm. The wolf's growl faded into an eerie silence. Ginger felt a flicker of hope. Was it backing down? Or was it simply waiting for a moment of weakness? The situation hung in the balance, and he knew they were on a knife's edge. "What do you want?" Ginger found himself asking, his voice trembling despite his bravado. But before he could receive an answer, the storm erupted again, shaking the barn. The wolf seemed startled, then turned, disappearing into the curtain of rain. Ginger blinked, breath held, the tension released as the growl faded into the distance. "Is it gone?" Sarah breathed, stepping forward. "I think so," John replied, scanning the dark. Ginger felt a wave of relief wash over him. But as he watched the last flicker of the wolf vanish, another emotion bubbled within him: curiosity. What did that creature want? It felt like a warning, but of what? The world outside had shifted, and they weren't just battling the storm anymore. Ginger's heart raced with uncertainty and dread, but also with an ember of bravery. Whatever it was, it's not over, he thought, turning his head back to the pup. We need to be ready for anything. What else would the night reveal? What challenges lay ahead? Ginger could feel something's changed. Andidipidon, dernier. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever came next. The sky had shifted into a palette of muted grays, and the storm's fury began to ebb, leaving behind a weighty silence in the barn. Ginger was alert, every muscle in his body tense as the air hummed with anticipation. That strange meeting with the wolf played over and over in his mind. What did it mean? Stay close. John's voice cut through the silence, urgency reflected in every syllable. Sarah nodded, wrapping her arms possessively around the little pup, who, despite its initial fear, seemed to draw strength from her comforting presence. Ginger stepped forward, resolute. We can't stay hidden forever. We need to check on the others, he urged. His heart pumped with newfound courage. They had already faced storms both literal and metaphorical together. Okay, John acknowledged with a firm nod, flexing his shoulders as if shaking off the strength-sapping fears of the last hours. Let's go see everyone. With cautious movements, they all shuffled towards the barn door, and as Ginger took his first steps outside, the world looked different, transformed by calamity yet painted with renewal. The rain had subsided into a soft mist, glistening off the remnants of the storm and creating an ethereal atmosphere that seemed almost magical. Look, Clover's voice rang out, her eyes wide as she pointed to what remained of the fenced area. Neighbors began to emerge from their homes wary but hopeful. They had weathered the storm together. The sight stirred something deep in Ginger's heart, a glow of gratitude lighting the darkest corners of his spirit. Is everyone accounted for? John called out, anxiety creeping back around the edges of his determination. As he scanned the faces that were returning with a mix of trepidation and relief, Ginger hustled around, giving a joyful bark here and a comforting nudge there, doing his best to spread the warmth of community and resilience. As they moved through the scattered remnants, familiar faces began to emerge, hearts easing slowly as they shared breathless stories of survival. Mr. Jenkins, covered in mud but smiling, waved his hands to gather attention. This right here is the heart of our community. We are stronger together, and it's time to rebuild. Cheers erupted around them, children laughed, and even amidst the debris strewn about, there was a sense of unity and hope budding like fresh flowers breaking through frost. Together, Ginger echoed within himself, feeling the tides of love pooling around him again. It was powerful and palpable, vibrating through the air like music. They were not just friends. They were family. Their mood shifted, and as they assessed the damage, plans sprang up from old hearts and hopeful dreams. They talked not just about the barn, but the farm and what tomorrow would hold. Ginger darted back and forth, aiding in any way he could, diving to rally his friends, seeking out the frightened animals to reassure them, tails wagging, always carrying optimism. As the sun dipped low, casting lengthening shadows around them, John placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. We might have lost some things today, but we have each other and a vision, he said, determination brightening his expression. That Wolf. What do you think it wanted? Ginger pondered, his voice barely above a whisper as he sidled up close to Sarah and John. "It was a warning," replied Sarah, thoughtfully. "It might have seen our vulnerability, but we won't be weak, Ginger. We will rise again." "I'll protect you," Ginger promised, and with a growing calm, he turned back to look at the gathered neighbors, appreciating the families held tight in laughter and conversation. They would rise together, undeterred by anything new. The spirit of the farm pulsed, with renewed energy, each person contributing to the colorful tapestry of their dreams. They weren't just rebuilding a barn. They were rebuilding their lives, stitching together every moment of laughter, shared meals, and the unwavering bond forged through struggle. Finally, beneath the lost hues of sunset, as darkness settled in, Ginger stood proud. Soft breezes whispered promises of better days ahead, and he felt grateful. The trials had only strengthened their connection. As their laughter faded into the darker hours of night, he knew they'd face whatever came next together much like family. Hearts and souls intertwined, always with courage leading the way. With determination twinkling in his eyes, Ginger let out a triumphant bark. He was ready for the path ahead, whatever it might hold. In that moment, hope blossomed in his heart, a vibrant reminder that through storms, adversity, and unknown futures, love and community would always guide the way forward. And as they gathered together under the blanket of stars, waiting for what would come next, the cycle of hope began anew, leaving Ginger excited for all the adventures yet to unfold. If you felt the spirit of Ginger and his family, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for this channel, so don't wait, not even one more second to share. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more hearts. Your comments on how this journey touched you are truly valued. Let us know your reactions and feelings about this incredible transformation. Don't miss out. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of love and community.